All right, welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict podcast. I'm one of your hosts, full-time mediator, Peter Taaffe.
I am your co-host, full-time litigator, Kyle Herbert.
I am also co-host, Bill Ogden, full-time litigator.
And deposition of Elon Musk taker.
Yep, we secured that. And my takeaway from Elon Musk's deposition is he's exactly what you thought he'd be.
Well, apparently he doesn't know anything about the case you brought against him, is what, of course, according to news reports.
What did he say? You guys were just lawyers looking for your payday?
Yeah, we were the plaintiffs. Just lawyers trying to get rich.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, hey,
it's not false.
So I'm not trying to get rich. I'm trying to get richer.
Yeah.
Okay, Elon?
All right, we got sideways on the hot topic of the day. We've got a very interesting, cool guest, at least that I've just met, but I had been watching his TikTok and other social media.
Are you
stuff.
TikTok famous?
I don't think I'm TikTok famous.
Well,
TikTok,
you're about to be.
TikTok entertaining. I'd check him out. It's I believe it's attorney James Fallon on TikTok, which I've commended to these guys to follow. So James Fallon, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Real quick to start, I got one question. So why not go by Jimmy?
It's confusing to the market.
I think so too. But I see a lot of shit.
It says going to be as good on the show. I don't know. It's a lot to live up to.
For him, I agree.
Well, now that you mention it, we've got someone coming on.
Jimmy Fallon.
Timberlake.
Jimmy Fallon.
Okay, make sure that's a clip on Instagram, Josh, so that we'll get some. Everyone, Justin Timberlake. He's running a little late, he says, or his agent says, but he'll be here to come do something with Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, with JT again.
Yeah,
they're gonna do
a little crazy.
They're gonna do a what? No, it's Andy Samberg, right? That does the D in a Box with the.
Lonely Island.
Yeah, the Lonely Island guy. That's my favorite musical group.
Yeah, they're awesome.
So good.
That's the only reason I like Michael Bolton as much as I do is that music video because, man,
Captain Sparrow?
Man. I was like, wow, Michael Bolton's cooler than I thought he'd be.
Have you seen that? I'm on a boat.
Oh, I've seen them all. Yeah.
Except Michael Bolton.
It's
T-Pain.
Yeah.
He's on a boat with T-Pain.
Yeah. We like in our family.
Peter.
Yeah, sorry. So James or Jamie, as some people refer to. Yeah, Jamie has a real interesting, one, background, and two, diverse practice areas. So
let's do background first.
Yeah, background is interesting. So where are you from originally?
Houston, Spring.
And then you mentioned at age 18 you went and did some kind of work with the Racehorse Haynes law firm, which was I think it was then law offices of Richard Haynes at that point.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I like the back story to it, which is my dad's a high school counselor. So if your parent is like a high school counselor, then you're expected to go into some kind of hard science, engineering or biology, some crap like that. And so I did electrical engineering at UT, and I remember finishing my finals at the end of my second semester, and I was like, I just can't do this, you know. But then you're not, in my family, allowed to leave. So I was stuck at this major, and my mom, who was a union president, was using this lawyer, Chris Tritico, and Tritico was working over at Haynes, law office of Richard Haynes at the time, formerly Haynes and Flownwire. So I started working with Tritico summer of 90, and when I was 18 years old, and got to be around all these criminal defense lawyers. So that's the origin story.
Got it. Tritico, pride of Sam Houston State University.
That's very correct. Yeah. An honored.
And you mentioned your mother was a union president. Which union was she in?
Houston Federation of Teachers.
Oh,
okay.
So it's a real.
I was going to guess Teamster, but I'll take teachers.
She's a real. My mom was a thug. There's no question. If you ask anybody that knew her in her prime,
she would bring out the muscle to get her way.
Yeah.
Yeah, she really did. I mean, and I'm really not exaggerating. I mean, she was really well respected on both sides of the aisle. I mean, she's personal relationships with every governor going back to the first Mark White, Bill Clements, Mark White again, Ann Richards, George Bush, and then Rick Perry.
Is she still living?
She is still with us, although she's retired, so she's back east. My parents are, one's from Oklahoma, one's from, I'm the only Texan. My mom was from Philadelphia. So they met at American University, moved down here. She couldn't get a job. So my mom, I love this, was in the National Security Agency. So if you go to school at Georgetown or American or George Washington, everybody that stays in town takes the test to try to get into government. That's just what you're trying to do. So she knocked it out of the park, and they sent her over to National Security Agency, where they trained her to read and write and to somewhat speak Vietnamese and code breaking. So she did she was a Vietnamese crypto linguist on a team code breaking during the end of the Vietnam War. Allegedly. Yeah, that's right. I guess
But if Ted wants to defend himself.
Don't worry, I've got us covered. I've got us covered on the defamation front.
Yeah. So when she moved to Texas, she couldn't get a job in an oil company. Like, she's this brainiac that had this great credential. They moved down here for jobs, and so then she started teaching, and that's how she ultimately became a teacher
in Spring?
Aldine. They were Aldine ISD,
Rough.
and we lived there, and that's why they moved to Spring.
So they came down here from D.C. area just for
get jobs in like '68.
Okay, yeah. And your dad was a counselor,
apparently.
Yeah,
Oklahoma, military guy, got a job or started going to school after the military in D.C. and then moved down, and then they both just started teaching. And he kept on teaching all the way through retirement, but she kind of made it about 10 years. She actually got driven out of Aldine because they ran candidates against the local board at the district where she worked, and they didn't quite win. And shortly afterward, she was told, yeah, it's about to go down, and they were going to start documenting her to fire her. So she ended up going over to North Forest ISD and getting a graduate degree from SAM in mid-management is what they called it, to be an administrator. But she's got a lot of Gail Fallon has a lot of fuck you in her. That's a quote.
This is your mother,
so
Gail?
that's my mommy.
That's two.
Yeah,
that's two FUs.
I don't.
You only have 13 more, so use it.
The dolphin one, I think, by implication counts.
I don't think that counts.
I'm not going to count it. You still have 14. You have 14 left.
In that context, that was a term of art. That wasn't a curse word.
That's a
That was
quote.
yeah.
Did Gail name you after Jimmy Hoffa?
Oh God, it sounds like the kind of thing she might do. I don't think she did.
Okay.
I don't know.
So back
There's
to
a lot of things that happened that I'm not really
Sure.
sure to the reasons behind it.
The whole thing was a black bag job from the NSA.
She's a mythological person. Growing up with her, you ever see the movie Big Fish?
Yes.
That's my mom. My mom was Big Fish, and she'll tell you. And I mean, she's convincingly, and I think it's hard to tell that she didn't go to see Martin Luther King speak in Washington D.C. That she met and played guitar with Libba Cotton.
She won't tell you this, although she did.
No, she will tell you.
Oh, she
don't
did.
know if she didn't. And
Got it.
So the NSA, she talks about decoding the Tet Offensive before it happened, and we're all like, did you do that stuff? And she's really smart, so you're like,
You can't tell if she's lying or not.
verify it. None of it. So
You can't prove that she's not definitely maybe telling the truth.
yeah, played guitar with Janis Joplin. Like, Mom, did you? Come on.
So she's like the Forrest Gump of teachers.
I think she doesn't sound like they're on the same intellect level, Peter.
Yeah. I'm talking about experience level.
Yeah. I don't think she was that big into running.
Yeah.
No, she's not. Billy, you might not know this.
And she didn't go to Alabama.
She's not.
Janis Joplin was elected the ugliest man on campus at UT.
Oh.
Was she?
Yeah, it's in the yearbook.
Oh my God.
Ugliest man on campus.
I'm going to choose not to believe that. Okay, so Gail Fallon, you kind of diverted when you dropped the F-bomb in an artful way, in my opinion. So she had gone and she was getting a doctorate?
Well, she was getting, if you wanted to be a principal in Texas in that era, in this area, everybody went to SAM and they got a mid-management degree, and which was a great degree. And so she was thinking she's going to move up into management. But she just has a certain personality. She wrote her for her master's. She was going to get her PhD, but she wrote her master's thesis on why do people join a union, and ended up organizing her Smiley High School, brought in something like 300 union members as just sort of part of her project, and ultimately got hired by the union, and 2 years later became the president of the union. And then from there, I mean, honestly, I think what she did from that point on was roll out her political science undergraduate degree in the region, starting with having great relationships with all the media sources, right? Rolling out her message through the media, farming HISD for the cases that the media wanted so that she had some currency to be able to get attention and get quotes. She had to be pretty good at it, really good at the politics.
Okay, so how does the union, the teacher union, you said she got people in at Smiley High School. I always thought that if you're a teacher, you're just in the union. Is that not the case?
Well, okay, so Texas doesn't have those kind of laws. That's what people would people that don't like unions will talk to me about things that don't exist in Texas. So the laws are just different here. Mm-hmm. So it's not what we call a closed shop. There's, at least in public sector, which is like police, teachers, firefighters, right? Public sector unions don't have the right to strike, and they're not closed shop, meaning 100% of the members don't participate in it. You go into Chicago and New York, the old school unions back east had what they would call a closed shop, and everybody was a member. God, I don't even have these rules to deal with, but I want to say that you do or you don't. You can or you can't. You don't have to join the union, but you have to pay the union dues back east. And so they'll have these unions that have 100,000, 50,000 people in them, and it's wild. And so that's not the way it works here. Here you join the union, and then the union comes in and helps represent you in grievances. And if you get fired, they hire a lawyer, and then the unions work politics with the board, and they, basically navigate that landscape while you teach.
Is there a centralized union in Texas, or are there a couple options?
There are competitors, and there's a structure. So there's AFL-CIO has a member called the American Federation of Teachers that has a state affiliation, Texas Federation of Teachers, that has regional unions.
Okay.
Houston Federation of Teachers, Ailey Federation of Teachers, Spring Branch Federation of Teachers. And so anywhere they can get, a critical mass in that school district, where they can justify a union, then they'll, put some resources into it. So, but then there's, different employee organizations and different scope. The Houston Federation of Teachers doesn't have like administrators in it, whereas I believe ATPE, and I can't remember what ATP and E stand for, but it's an educator organization. It also has administrators. So,
like all the way up to superintendent.
That's management, you scab.
Well, no, but that's administration, I believe, is what you mean.
I've seen The Legend of Natty Gann. I know what happens. Collaborator.
How old are you?
Quick with that. Yeah, that's exactly the issue. Like the AFL-CIO organizations don't like the conflict, so they don't have management. So I assume ATP goes up to the superintendent. But they usually have their own special lawyers off to the side and handle theirs.
Kyle's favorite movie, Norma Ray.
Yeah.
Norma Ray.
Oh, I was about to guess that. Dang it.
Yeah. He talks about Sally Field a lot, Norma Ray. So, okay, because I don't know how it works. So if you are just going to work for some school district or school as a teacher, do you get some option like, hey, would you like to join this union? And then if yes, then maybe you get a better salary or better...
They don't negotiate on those terms. The salary for public entities is always like a salary schedule.
Got it.
The union helps negotiate the system, right? And in HISD, historically, they've had employee consultation, which was essentially a time when the employee organizations could come together with management and discuss, like, hey, you're rolling out this policy. If you thought that there would be a problem if you did it, and some collaborative, although non-binding, discussion about policy that's been very productive in the last 30 years. They don't have it now, but they did. And so the union would represent in a large level like that, and also at the state level. So, for example, I can remember No Pass, No Play being a big union issue, and then also the Chapter 37 in the 90s, which is a teacher's right to kick a violent kid out of the classroom. Those are big union initiatives. That were negotiated on a state level through lobbying and all that stuff, and the different discipline systems for teachers, like how they fire them, how they sanction their certification. The union's been at the table when we've had those discussions. So that's how the union represents. Now on a mechanical level, why would you join one? I think you should join one. I think you should join the Houston Federation of Teachers. I'm biased, but I'll also say that you're going to have a hard time finding a good lawyer to represent you whenever there's trouble. And it's such specific trouble. You know what I mean? It's 15-day deadline trouble, right? With quirky little rules and all that stuff. And so it's nice that, you're having trouble in your life, you're getting fired for something, you feel like an injustice has been done, and you can't find a competent lawyer, nor could you afford to pay one. You're a school teacher.
I think, well, maybe I'm wrong. You might know this, but I would assume over the last year and as we move forward with the current administration that HIC at least is probably having a pretty big influx of teachers joining unions.
So that's a good question. I know that yes, but they've had a lot of people leaving the district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got this flow of people coming in. And
they're not even teachers, right? Or it's not certified. I couldn't remember. I saw the article.
Oh man, it's not, and I'm more rich on anecdotal data than I am on the mass data. But in the summer, I'll usually process that. But I've seen the kind of cases that have come to me are just, it's ridiculous.
But before we go any further, tie this all together. We haven't covered this. What do you do?
Okay, that's a fair question.
Yeah. Because I don't know. We just met seconds ago.
You weren't a part of our conversation earlier.
Also, they provide pretty comprehensive research to me.
Oh, good.
But for fun, I never read it. I say, fuck it. Ding, ding, ding.
So we'll start with Jamie. Jamie's a lawyer.
There we go.
Okay. Okay. And then?
So I do criminal defense.
Okay.
Across the board, although I like more significant conflicts. I do teacher cases, which include teacher terminations and teacher certification cases.
Got it.
And then here lately, I've been doing personal injury cases as well. Well, that's a new thing.
And do you have some position with one of the unions or take cases from them, or is that just an informal thing? Or
so the Houston Federation of Teachers and I have, I'm one of the two lawyers, myself and Chris Tritico, that they send cases to.
Got it.
So I don't work for the union in that way. I don't represent the union. They send me a case.
You're just a handy person to have on a speed dial.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's a great referral source.
Oh, yeah.
And I assume they pay for that representation of their union member?
Yeah. They send me a case, and then I give them a dramatically discounted hourly rate to work on this stuff. But, it's an organization that I've grown up with that organization, or that organization grew up with me, depending on how you look at it.
When did you start doing this?
So if I was licensed in 96. I'd been doing grievances for the union the last 2 years of law school. And then, so I probably started doing terminations probably a year and a half or so. You get out, you want to grow up a little bit as a lawyer before you start taking stuff on. So I started doing the termination cases, just a little bit after.
It's like 30 years.
Yeah. But I addressed the school board for the first time when I was like 9 or 11. So because my mom was in this battle with the old superintendent, Billy Reagan, and we lived in Spring, and he was making a bunch of statements about, like, why is this person who lives in Spring come down and messing with our school district? And so it brought me into the conversation. And so, they propped me up in front of a mic to ask him to stop doing it, So, and Billy Reagan, by the way, who recently passed away maybe about a year ago, ended up being a dear friend of ours for a long period of time. So I've had a long relationship with that union.
Got it.
The union president that we have now, I defended her in a termination case and won that case. And then they took that issue up to the state and tried to take her license, and I defended her in the license and won both of those things.
On the admin side?
On the admin side, that's right. They're not jury trials. They're all administrative hearings in one form or another.
If you're a member of a union, are you then subject to a different disciplinary or administrative, or is it the same process?
It's the same process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I interrupted you, you were about to say some stuff about what's going on in HISD. You said I had a bunch. You said you have some anecdotal stories, not.
When he was talking about the
influx of
teachers,
members joining unions,
right,
because of the current.
So agonizing. It's agonizing because I've been around it. Both parents were educators, and I've been immersed in education. I know what it's supposed to look like, right? I don't think I could do the job. Let me just say that, but I know what it's supposed to look like for a teacher. The kind of training. I can see a green one come in, and what happens their first, second, and third year. And I've just never seen what I'm seeing now. I had a gentleman that came in from out of state to get a job in HISD because he thought he was going to make $100,000, right? Because that's what they're telling people. And so he came in for that. He shows up for work after moving from out of state, where he had only lived with his parents and never been a teacher before, and worked at home. right? We're out of his parents' home,
Okay.
right? And moves here, and he gets into a classroom and didn't think he was going to be in a classroom. And his car gets hit by an uninsured motorist. He didn't have insurance like the first day. And he soon, around that time, realized he's not making $100,000. He's making like $65,000. And so he's moved here, and his car's out. He's making significantly less. And then that's the first scene, and just roll that out. And it went into a series of absences, and he gets fired his first year. I mean, they normally don't fire probationary teachers the first year. You give them a chance. You got to give them some support. You know what I mean? And so, this poor guy had a terrible experience. I mean, and yes, he missed days, but it's not like he'd gone through some training to understand, like, what does it even mean to be a classroom teacher? Like, he had no idea.
This is recently?
This was about 2 months ago.
Oh,
yeah. This happened. The events happened in August, September, October, but he was out of the classroom by October 31st.
But I was saying this isn't in the 90s. This is recent.
This is the current state of affairs. This is the current state of affairs, and so there. And I got to meet a lot of probationary teachers, because normally it's hard to explain, but you can let a probationary teacher just write out their contract and get rid of them. No hearing, nothing. They're probationary. You just non-renew the contract. Done. But they fired all these people mid-year, which gives them the right to a hearing. So I got to meet them. No, I wouldn't meet them, because I need a lawyer.
Because they do a 1-year contract?
They do a 1-year probationary contract. They can non-renew it at the end of the year, no consequence, no lawyer fees, nothing, no hearing. But if they're going to break the contract, they need to show good cause. So I had to meet a bunch of them, and there are all these attendance cases, that's the majority.
When you say attendance cases, you're not talking about people that just...
Days.
But often, we were talking about one before we started the show, and you were saying that, there's this teacher that has years and years of PTO saved up, and she's got but she can't technically use it.
So that's, right. Well, okay, so there's some nerdy stuff to go down the path of it. There's kind of these categories of them. The new people that I'm talking about are getting fired, in my view, for folly, right? They're blowing it. They don't have support, and they didn't have a shot from day one. That's my comment on a lot of the new ones. Not all of them, but the ones I end up meeting. And then I'm now wading into this other section. Right now on my docket, I have probably 6 or 7 people that are people that have been around. They're term contract teachers, so it's probationary, and then you kind of graduate to a term contract. And if you fire them at the end of the year, you get you not renew them at the end of the year, they get a hearing. You break the contract, you get a hearing. One way or another, you get the same kind of hearing. So you're digging into this stuff. And there are people that had been denied family medical leave, and and I just never see anything like it. People that have leave banked up that are being fired when they are going beyond the number of days, and for reasons that in the past would have always been granted for family medical leave. I got a veteran who he's being fired. I think he had maybe 15 or 18 absences, something like that. So it's not an insignificant amount. Let me just state that. But they're for reasons that were never going to lead to a termination in the past 30 years. He's a veteran. He had VA appointments. Was in Afghanistan. He had injuries, so he had medical appointments to the VA hospital. He would have to make 6 months out, maybe 6, 7, 5 months out. So he'd make these appointments and then go to them. And then his father died at the beginning of the year, so he get some bereavement leave. When you add all this up, it was beyond the threshold that's been set this year by the superintendent, and they're firing this guy.
So, what do you think he's doing?
Well, let me.
Oh, go ahead, Kyle.
I was going to say, some of our listeners aren't here in Houston. Probably a lot of them are, but a lot of them aren't, and they might not understand the context of what's going on in this state with regard to education, and in particular with what's going on at HISD. Maybe give our audience 90 seconds on what's happened at HISD the last 3 or 4 years.
Here's what happened. Greg Abbott captured, I think it's like the 4th or 6th largest school district in the state of Texas. That's what happened as a result of litigation that's been going on for a while. So Greg Abbott, through his appointee in the TEA, Mike Morath, has taken over the school district. And, I can answer why that is. But so that has resulted in the board being dismissed.
Yep.
I say dismissed, but that's not exactly what it is. But they've been replaced with an appointed board and a superintendent that's been appointed. So
there's no longer local control of the school board. It's now run through Austin.
Right.
Well, who? Because there was a news
version of the poll tax.
How do you mean that?
No,
Meaning you've disenfranchised the people that have traditionally voted for the thing that most directly impacts their life, which is their kids' education.
well, there's because if you're at HISD, you pay taxes.
Yeah.
You don't have a vote, right, of the school board that administers that money. What was the process where people could apply to be new members, and who made the decision on who would be the new board members?
It's all appointed, meaning they put out an application, and anybody could apply.
Right.
I mean, I could have applied.
Kyle applied.
Did he?
No.
He applies for everything.
Yeah.
I applied. I'm a member of the National Geographic Society. Some of you don't know that.
Oh my God!
But you pay your $16 a year,
Okay.
and you get a card. No, I did not apply to
Yeah.
it.
He didn't do that. He'd have shown us the card.
Okay, so lots of people applied, and there were some news stories about who, different people that it was because it's public record, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it was a stacked deck. They knew who they're going to appoint. They did have a process they can show in the press. I mean, I know this. Look, I've been watching education politics since I was a little kid, so there's not a question about how this works. They appointed people who would let the game plan go through, and that's what's been going on.
What was the game plan, or what is the game plan? Because right now it seems like they're just running the district in the
I'm only
ground.
going to be able to speculate, but I don't think I'm wrong.
In your opinion, what do you think
It's
the
not.
game plan is?
Okay, so here's the way it works. If the state budget's this big, the education budget's like this big, right? This much of it, and HISD is the biggest part of it.
Yeah.
Right? And the powers that be in the state of Texas, Greg Abbott, don't want to pay for it.
Sure.
That's the bottom line. And so and you can go down and call them whatever you want. You can call it charter schools.
Vouchers.
You can call it vouchers. But they're all different ways to pay less.
Yep.
And so when you take control of that biggest part of the budget, right, now you have the ability to figure out a way to pay less. And to answer the question, what's going on in HIC, they're going to pay less. That's what's going on. They do it through their tools.
Why is there a reason why Austin or Dallas or another larger metropolitan area in Texas hasn't been targeted?
Most of them are much smaller, but go ahead.
Oh, well, I just love this because I like answers to all these questions.
Good.
Yeah, and we have no idea what we're talking about.
Most of the time we ask our guests questions and they just stare at us.
Yeah.
What?
It's just a meditation session.
Fun, That's not true. A bunch of these, lawyers around here aren't that boring. Maybe. So keep in mind, Mike Morath previously was on the school board in Dallas ISD. And keep in mind that Mike Miles was a superintendent that Mike Morath had hired in Dallas. But with the elected board system, and I wish I could remember the dates, like how long it took, immediately ran that superintendent out. Mike Miles was ran out of Dallas doing this exact same thing, right? And so Mike Morath left the elected position on the board and ended up, when Greg Abbott became the governor, was his appointee to head out the TEA. And so so this is a team that's already been existing that we know didn't function well with an electorate. Okay, so
Wait, so the superintendent for HISD right now was run out of Dallas?
yeah, there's not a question about that. I mean, if you ask any of the local politicos in the area, the union, then they'll talk about him running through these same kind of policies, and people just wouldn't take it. Right now, if you don't like the way that Mike Miles changed your kid's calendar here in HISD,
Tough.
you don't have anybody to talk to about it.
Well, if you could describe the current HIC superintendent in one word, what would it be?
I think it's severe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's severity and cruelty are the two things that come to
I was just going to call him an asshole, but yeah.
What was
It's cruel. I mean, I'm specifically cruel. I mean, I have specific examples of things that make me upset. If you want to see me F-bomb, maybe talk about my cases where, I mean, these aren't like, it's just cruelty and severity, right? It's like a prison camp over there. And I'm certainly not exaggerating. I'm just quoting the people that I talk to on a regular basis about it. So
Yeah, what you mentioned litigation. So what was the litigation that at least justified this whole
Takeover.
wipe out the superintendent, wipe out the school board, put in state control, which is typically something that
I don't think it's ever happened.
people don't. Well, I think like Lamarck got.
so I know what I was going to do. Go back and man, you got so much material here. It'll loop back to this other question you asked about why HISD.
Yeah.
Okay. So and it goes to answer this other question.
Okay.
So, HISD is the opportunity. So they had a school. There's a takeover law that had been around for like a long time. And I'm going to blow this because I haven't had to litigate it. I mean, I'm just vaguely aware of the way it worked. But it had to do with like not meeting state testing standards for more than, however many cycles, right? And so one of the schools in Houston, and forgive me because I can't remember which school it was.
Deer Park, probably.
Yeah, we're horrible.
Is HIC school. So
We'll go with that for now, but
Deer Park.
probably was
That's
different.
where I'm from.
You hail from, I guess it's a shot.
Every woman in my family was a Deer Park teacher, so great school.
Awkward science there.
Yeah, no, I'm aware. We have the oil and gas energy industry that influxes a giant amount of cash that other districts don't actually get. So,
Okay, so some school in Harris County, in HISD, ran afoul of whatever these testing.
Blew it, and then, but there are provisions where you could go, mess with it to make it to where the law wouldn't work. So they're litigating it. The TEA gave them a warning, and then they moved to take over the district, and they've tried to take over, and they have successfully taken over other districts. I want to say Beaumont. There's a history of taking over smaller districts, but nothing as titanic as HISD, the biggest part of the education budget. So, so they've been litigating it with the TEA, trying to take them over. And while the litigation was going on, Democrat Harold Dutton initiated and got passed a law that weakened the strength or weakened the requirements for taking over a school district, right? Made it easier. And so because
Where's
of
Dutton
that,
from?
Dutton's
Here.
in Houston. He's
Here.
a Houston representative. And so when he did that, it gave the Supreme Court the ability to say, hey, that's all great, but the point is moot. Because of this new law, the district is going to be able to do exactly what they wanted to do and then rule at Supreme Court level to allow the takeover. And so that's why
Party of small government.
that's why
Makes
HISD.
sense.
That's
So,
why HISD.
Jamie, one thing you hear from people who want to make schools better, whatever side they're on, they say, well, we want to pass all these laws that will make schools better, but these teacher unions protect these crappy teachers, and they won't let us do it. So which I don't know, it doesn't sound like
careful. Pick a side, Pete. Pick a side.
I can answer this.
No, I was going to say.
Nah, I'm just messing with you.
No, because on teachers unions, you said, well, they advocate and they've got a good lobbying and they provide lawyers. But it's like, what is it that unions have this immaculate power to do that prevents sensible, according to these people, sensible laws from being passed?
Nothing here. Nothing in Texas. It's not. This isn't Chicago. This isn't New York. This isn't San Francisco or L.A. So we don't have. It's not a wall-to-wall unit. We don't have 100,000 people in the union, and we don't have collective bargaining. We don't have those things. And so what you get here is a hearing to give some factual findings when you've got an allegation that a seventh grader says you grabbed him funny and hurt his arm, and you get a judge to tell us whether you think that that's right. And if it's not right, then you go back to work.
And that's the process regardless of whether it's a union member or not a union member.
Yeah.
It's the same process, right?
Yeah. The unions aren't.
You just get a union lawyer to defend you.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And you don't have to pay for it. I mean, you paid your dues.
You paid your dues, yeah.
You get a discounted lawyer, or you get a lawyer that's willing to, work at discounted hours to represent you because you paid him whatever the dues were that year.
I mean, it sounds pretty evil as you explain it.
Yo,
It's horrific.
how do you sleep at night?
I see the oppression inherent in the system.
Yeah.
What is the issue, Jamie, that in rural districts the public school system's operating pretty well, and those representatives who usually hold a outsized level of power versus how many their population, those people are like, public schools are working fine, and the people in the big cities are like, it's not working fine, and we can't. It's not a one size fit all.
Different problems, when you move in and out of population dense areas. I mean, you just don't have the same.
It's about money.
there's funding issues that you can get at, and there's been 40 years of litigation over the funding issues, and so there've been efforts to make sure that they equalize among the districts, and that's its own controversy.
Well, that's the Robin Hood program.
The Robin Hood plan, and there's a current version of it, and that Spring Branch is currently fighting. That's not my sharpest area, but I know that that's a big part of it. But you just don't have the same collection of problems at scale in a smaller area. Right? Sure. Transportation's a bigger issue in a rural area. But, here in Houston, where you have, a wider range of socioeconomic levels, and you're expected to educate all of them.
Sure.
Have a wider
different
range.
Languages, different economic backgrounds.
Right.
All more handicapped kids.
Right.
The stuff going on in rural schools is very different than urban schools.
Way more underprivileged, like homelessness, like all that stuff.
Which leads me to my next question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Homeless kid population.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Is in this last legislative session, and what I like to call the special sessions, because you get a lot of special sessions, because Greg is special. My question is, it seemed for some interesting political bedfellows that aligned to fight the voucher bill. So you've got, very white, very middle class, rural school districts, rural representatives aligning with urban, in lots of cases, minority representatives to fight the same voucher bill. Very rarely do those two groups line up to say, we want our schools to function and be funded.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Well, that's my question is, did you have the same observation, and what do you think the future is of that kind of strange political coalition?
I can say this. What you just described would have brought a tear to Gail Fallon's eyes, because that was the linchpin of what she did when she was a union president, was that she had friends across the aisle in all areas and at many levels in government. So she was able to talk about issues, stay away from party allegiances, and solve problems in areas where there was agreement. And so, however that came together, the people that worked to bring those two groups together are heroes, right? Because they were able to bridge communication and other gigantic political differences to find the things that are in common. And there were things in common. They don't want vouchers, right? They fight against vouchers for different reasons.
Yeah.
Right? And so the rural districts, I've heard theories about the way that it works with the, first of all, the local economy, right?
Is completely dependent upon the school district.
Right. Well,
they hire the cafeteria workers, the bus drivers, the teachers.
there's not alternatives either, because if you
there's no private school within 1,000. Well,
yeah,
within 150 miles. Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's fewer alternatives, and also, I'm not going to be able to do this, but the UIL system is a big factor, as I understand it. It was the sports significance of sports and the financial significance of sports. In the rural areas that typically vote Republican.
Sure.
All that is at stake when those guys are forming their coalitions, enough to be able to motivate them to make alliances with Dallas, make alliances with Houston, San Antonio, and Austin to figure out how do we block this.
What do you think the future of that is?
Dim. I haven't seen the numbers, but Greg Abbott's a smart person, and he spent the last session figuring out who is the problem, what specifically is that problem in that person's district, and then has run candidates against him in this last Republican primary. So this time next year, the problems he had in the last session, he will not have. And I believe the analysis was that he was 100%, he got 100% victory rate, or some high percentage of victory rate, running Republicans against Republicans to take out the people that were opposing his voucher system.
So could anyone go to Greg's office and look at the money that's been donated by these out-of-state lobbying groups that want to neuter public education?
Yeah.
Couldn't we just look at that as a percentage of the overall education budget? Couldn't we just stroke him a check?
Get him out.
Yeah. No, not get him out.
Say, pay him off.
Say, look, the Betsy DeVos's foundation is giving you this much money. We will match it out of the state education budget, just straight cash homie right to Greg. Why can't we do that?
I haven't heard Betsy DeVos's name in a long time.
God, I forgot about how unqualified she was.
Yeah.
That's pretty good because I don't think that money is going to buy the thing he wants. I think he wants to be the president. And so...
President of what?
The United States. I'm pretty confident that what's going on here is that he's doing this to create the platform that will get him into office after the next round. That's my first one.
He has to because he quashed COVID.
Well, I was going to say,
If Perry dancing across the stage couldn't get in then.
He's got 5 reasons.
Yeah. George W. Bush, I think, took an earnest attempt at trying to improve education. I believe that his heart was in the right place, and he couldn't do it, and he still became president. So there you go. Yeah. But there was a whole bunch of education reform stuff going on during George W. Bush's governorship.
Kind of all stuff out of Houston. Rod Page was Secretary of Education.
Yeah.
A board member, friend of my mom's, friend of mine, superintendent. Mm-hmm. All that group that went up, was all that policy, was very well intentioned. You're not going to fix something that's that expensive of a problem.
Yeah.
Do you think?
So I fix it. You can.
I follow this. I follow this stuff about Mike Miles on the Twitters,
and I don't like to be vitriolic about people. Like I don't know him, and I don't want to say negative things about a person I don't know.
Fuck that guy.
But I can say that I've seen the effect. Yeah, I know. Look a little.
But he didn't say it.
I got it. Yeah. I said it.
But it's not about being politically correct about it. It's just that.
And I'm not going to ask a nasty question.
Ask a nasty question.
My question is, when it comes to Mike Miles and Greg Abbott, people say, well, why would you do this? This is a terrible decision, blah, blah, blah. And my canned response is, the goal is not to fix the thing. The goal is to say, the boat is sinking. Can I sell you a life vest, which is vouchers?
Exactly correct. Well, if you go beyond that, you got to take if you really want to understand how it works, it's very simple. I want to pay less. That's all it is. And then now I'm thinking about the leverage here, right? We've just taken out the biggest district in the state of Texas. And then what are you going to do? I'm going to make phone calls to all the other districts, and I'm going to say, hey, you saw what happened in Houston.
You're next.
We would like to have a pilot program for charter schools in your district. How's that sound to you? We want to use these 17 buildings. You got a problem with it?
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Well, so a couple of things real quick. Charter schools, though, were the hot thing 20 years ago, and I think some turned out to be really good, but then some turned out to be total frauds, right? And they were busts, and the students were screwed up. That's one. Two, is there some mechanism when they took HISD out of the normal deal and took it over? Is it okay? You have 5 years, Mr. Miles, Mr. Morath. If these testing results that got the thing out of into your lap in the first place, if they don't improve by 10% or 15%, then it's back to something else. It just stays there.
They don't
forever?
give a shit about the kids.
Well, I know, but I'm trying to take an honest, legitimate approach.
Right, they don't. That's the most reasonable idea I've heard on education.
If you said, Bill, you can't drive very well, you've had 10 tickets, I'm going to give your car to Kyle, but Kyle, you have to have less than 7.
Kyle doesn't have legs.
Can I try and field the answer to this question?
Right.
Okay.
I'm trying to be rational.
And that's
the problem.
Yeah.
You can't.
What if we tracked down those people who have been running every facet of public education in this state since 1995?
Track them down?
This problem has been handled exclusively by one political party since 1995.
Oh, right.
Who are now complaining about this terrible system.
Kyle, you're always going after the Reds.
Okay, but two questions. One,
they're the ones that say there's a problem. I'm asking, whence did this problem arise?
But to our subject matter expert, two things. One, what is your take on charter schools and the fact that some have been, busts and some have been very good? And two, what is the mechanism for do they say to HISD, if you want to go back to the normal where you vote on school board and...
You mean democracy?
Yeah, democracy. What has to be done did the court and the order allowing the takeover, did they say, here's the stipulations once you get...
Is there a goal or an end game?
They ran or published a little plan, right, to reintegrate board members over a period of time, the elected board members.
Well, that sounds like DEI.
DEI.
The word integrate, as
Oh, sure.
it freaks me out.
Okay, so the court's order has a step by
It's not
step.
a court order. They took over the They ruled you could take it over, and they took it over, and then they, on their own, initiated and published this plan to hand local control back over to the elected board members. But it's it's like a 4-year plan, and but it's my opinion, based on the things I've seen, is that the goal is not to let it re-exist as the biggest budget item in the state of Texas. That's not the goal.
Still in a fail.
The goal is to justify the next step, which is to break it up. And the biggest controversy competition among the ISDs and the charter schools is the buildings, right? If you want to go start a charter school, you can go write a plan, you can come up with all the steps and do all the things and hire the experts and go apply to have your charter school in the state of Texas. And you're going to have some money coming from them, but you got to go get buildings to go put these kids in, and that is the biggest expense, right? And so they want the charter schools want ISD buildings, and that's been this big fight for some period of time, and they're about to get them. That's what it means.
How?
And so, whenever here's how I predict that it'll go down. This time next year, the governor is going to have a wish list from his A team, Mike Morath and Mike Miles. This is what we need you to do legislatively so that we can accomplish our goals in HISD. And then you're going to see that passed next session. And they're going to walk out the following September armed with laws that let them do a lot of radical things when it comes to charter schools and leveraging the buildings in whatever way suits them. Can I say exactly how that's going to work? No, but I can tell you that that's exactly what's happening.
I got a couple questions now. One, why have I never heard a single public school teacher or educator support charter or vouchers, charter schools or vouchers?
Oh, I don't. Well, okay, so here's why you don't get the vouchers, right?
Vouchers is the easy one.
Yeah, you can't. There's some services that you can only provide well at scale. SPED, bilingual services, right? Wraparound services are another one. Like when you've got pockets of poverty in your school district that need, after school care, other community services you can provide in there.
Yeah, school lunch.
Yeah, so there's lots of things that happen better. And busing systems. So there's lots of things that happen better at scale that a charter school is going to have a hard time providing, right? And so voucher systems will take out, I'm blending two things. Voucher systems, the argument is it takes money out of that system to be able to provide those things at scale that we need. And it subsidizes people that really already have the money to send their kids to private school to begin with. So those are the two kind of big arguments. The charter school issue ends up being the scale services as well, right? Okay. If you think about a great and robust system of competitive charter schools and other programs like pinnacle programs in HISD, like Carnegie Vanguard, HSPVA, Energy High School, right? And you think about how kids get into those programs. And then you imagine where do the kids that don't have a parent advocating for them, getting them special training so they can get into HSPVA or special math tutoring so they can end up at Energy High School, filling out the paperwork on time, being literate enough to follow the bouncing ball through the system, all that stuff, politicking, the parents that can't, what happens to kids that don't have that, right? Well, they end up in the ISD, right? And so there's this tension among educators who like the system that says, well, why are you taking my best kids? Because I had a group and we were working together. Not everybody was at the same level, but the overall output was best. But when you take the best kids and you leave me with the kids that only have the worst problems, then you've robbed those kids of something special. And then you're paying me less to do with those kids what needs to be done. And that's not a quick way to say it, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I think, Bill, to your question, I think there's a lot of teachers that would be interested in a charter school program for the flip side of what Jamie was saying, in that kids in charter schools, their parents care and they're engaged and they want their kid to be educated and they want their kid to be safe.
Then work fucking harder and pay for private school.
Well,
Yeah, get a job.
So if you have 20 students who their parents are engaged, that's better than 20 students whose parents don't care, don't get them to school, don't
My
feed
advice to
them.
them is instead of being so engaged in your kid's education, get engaged in your job, and you don't have to be engaged. You can just pay private school for it.
Right, no, I'm talking about the teachers who do choose. And another point, I understand New Orleans is 100% charter school, as I understand it, after Katrina.
I don't remember New Orleans had a big controversy, and I don't remember enough to speak on it. I can't.
Yeah, I heard an interview where they're 100%. DC's very high percentage. A couple other cities are high percentage. And I just say this because I had after Katrina, I represented a lot of people that were in the travel trailers, and so got to know a lot of single parents, and their kids were in the KIPP schools, I believe is very big there, and they were like night and day happy about the fact that they're in the KIPP schools there.
My second question was, even if they, after destroying education for all these kids that need it now, who's going to teach in all these charter schools and voucher programs? Because no one wants to be a teacher.
Well, he's saying who wants to teach in the schools. If the charter schools really take off, the people that get left behind in the remaining ISDs, no one's going to want to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's going to be no teachers left.
Well, and that bounces back to the charter school issue. So the thing that I see the charter schools, when I talk to people that have worked in the charter schools, is that they wear multiple hats, and the working conditions are generally considered not sustainable. Right. In other words, they work really, really hard, and it's hard to do that for a whole career.
Sure.
And that's kind of the basic essence of.
It's like the Peace Corps.
Right.
You show up as an idealist. You pour your life into it for 3. I have a lot of friends that have taught in charter schools.
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of them came from private religious school backgrounds. They wanted to join these charter schools to do what they would consider mission work in the inner city.
Yeah, right.
And they did great at it. And then they got to year 3 or year 4 and were like, I mean, this is not.
It's a burnout job.
This is not a job. It cannot be a career.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not a career. It's all data driven now, and it's stupid. Teachers aren't teaching. They're teaching us how to take a dumb test.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of that.
I'm really good at tests.
No one's a fan. The only people that are fans are people that own shares or some financial beneficiaries of the TEKS, tax, task, whatever you want to call it.
I'm not a good test taker, said every stupid person I've ever met.
Let's go. That's another topic. Standardized tests. Is anything like, what is the view from your clients, postal teachers, on standardized tests? Good thing, bad thing?
Oh, I think that the majority of teachers I talk to are, they're soldiers when it comes to doing that. If that's what you want us to do, you could go back a couple generations. Like if you had teachers in the 90s when they were starting to migrate towards weighting the test more and more, would resent it because, you've got the goals in 8th grade of getting children from this level to this level in writing, and you can do it over the course of the year, and you've been doing it for 10 or 15 years. But the things you have to do to get the kids to transcend to that higher level of fluid essay writing are interrupted because you're spending all this time running out this testing curriculum. So that's the general complaint. But I will say that's like probably 2 generations of teachers ago,
Yeah.
So now most people are kind of just soldiering up about it. They're constantly wanting to link pay to the test results. And, I told you I've got a math background. And so I've looked at it, and it's very difficult. You've got too many variables to be able to lay the responsibility on one person.
Especially in the inner city.
Well, and then particularly if you're not going to give that person all the resources, like, okay, you're going to make me responsible, then I get to control the budget, And so that one, and that one need this kind of tutoring. That one needs dyslexia training and remediation. This one over here needs to be tested for, other disability.
We had
not really.
And there were 2+ years of COVID where you've got all these students who are just totally, different levels now.
I'd say why the biggest thing that it really.
Say someone who's 16.
I know a 16-year-old, okay, very well, who's gone through this whole process, was identified early childhood as some kind of disability. Don't know what. Go into kindergarten, private school setting, they'll let you throw money at the problem, right? They're going to do things you say, they're going to let you supplement, and then second grade diagnosis dyslexia with dyslexic or as a dyslexic person. Given therapy in the school 4 days a week for an hour a day, and given 3 days a week in school, 4 days a week outside of school at like $120 an hour, right? So going forward from the first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, also occupational therapy for close to $200 an hour for 2, maybe 3 days a week for first and second grade, right? All of that effort, and then come home to 2 educated parents who are very good at teaching math, very good at understanding these things because of the collective knowledge in the household and then the resources in the household. Private schools running, I mean, that's easily a $50,000 a year job or task. If you don't want to do that whole thing piecemeal, you can just send them to the Joy School, which is a phenomenal institution, private school. It's about $50,000 a year, right? Not a problem. You can handle dyslexia, right? You can get that kid into law school. Not a problem. Well, what do you do with a kid who was never diagnosed with any of those things? One parent's in prison, being raised by the grandmother, the other parent's a drug addict, and they don't discover the dyslexia until the 9th grade or 11th grade.
Or ever.
Or ever. Correct. And so like the first kid, they're documented, right? We got all the testing. When it comes time for that kid to take the SAT or the LSAT or whatever other graduate course, you can go all the way back to all the testing and all the accommodations that have been given all along the way. This other kid doesn't have any of that documentation. And so it is so vile to me to consider the idea that the goal here, and I believe this to be true, is to simply just pay less. And it's really to pay less, considering the people that need more. I mean, it would be, if I were to go back and take a 9th grader who had missed out on all of like a decade worth of remediation, right, and try to get that kid up to speed, that's $100,000 a year job. People talk about reparations and as a way to deal with the poverty that has come from the results of slavery, right? And one way I think about reparations could be effectively given is through a genuine effort to educate children beyond the poverty circumstance. That's a personal view that I have. But that having been said, when we talk about vouchers and we talk about these other systems that tell me that they can educate the kid for $12,000 a year, then I say that is not true. That's not true for the populations and the needs of the populations in Houston, the very, very groups that cause the district to be taken over.
Yeah, I think one thing you...
No.
Didn't
have fun.
No, it's fine.
No, this is the most fascinating interview we've had, in my opinion.
Y'all are generous.
Yeah, so
James... Monterey Alice as much.
So, yeah, we can have them come and debate. I don't know where he is on that.
Where he is on that.
Wait,
I can't remember if he...
Monterey
because he voted for the impeachment, which is why I think he got crossways with some of the folks. Anyhow, sidetrack. I do think... I think it's hard to argue that you cannot be a cheapskate with education, public education, no matter however you want to do it. You've got to put the resources in it. How you want to allocate the resources, that's up for debate. But to think you can, with this growing state and growing and COVID and all the problems, to think that you can...
such a bleeding heart liberal. Can you spare $30 billion, brother? It's what we have in the rainy day fund.
No, I think that's the argument is that, because look, I'd make a plea to people who want to cut that back. These kids that are going to
kids,
they're not going to, if they don't do well, they're going to end up doing so. They're going to.
Yeah, it's the pipeline.
Yeah, it's just so.
It's just another way to gut the middle class.
So I think the issue should be get the money in there and then have a discussion about how to best implement it and the effective way to do it. But if it's really if you're right that this is actually about starving it to death, that's probably not a good. Starving it to death financially. That's not a good thing.
Different position on the HISD takeover. If they were rolling out $30,000 a kid expenditures in the school feeder patterns that were failing, and they could show me that, right, I would feel totally different.
And isn't that the crazy thing about HISD, though?
some of the schools are extremely successful, and a handful aren't.
Yeah, look where they are.
I mean, HSBVA is doing great, but a lot of
That's a form of that's special. I mean,
I understand, but it's not like it's not. I mean, I would posit that HISD on the whole is probably better than any school district in Louisiana or West Virginia.
That's not a very high bar to cross.
I know it's not.
Yeah, but nobody's taking over those states, their biggest cities' public school district, and then castrating them.
Yeah,
Slowly.
yeah. I hope the argument, because if you can make the argument that, look, put the money in, commit the money, then let's talk about using private, kind of capitalist versus with arguably not capitalist. Like, okay, that's fine. Like, do a free market stuff, but get the money in, and then we can have that discussion. I think if that's the framework, then I think we're in good shape. But if it's really like, no, are y'all just really wanting to cut this down 60% and then dealing with it? Well, then, yeah,
We'll come back. We'll all reconvene in 2 years, another 2 years, and we'll see if my predictions are right. But I guarantee you, it's going to be leveling down, paying less.
Right.
As a bottom line, there'll be a lot of minutia things you can argue one way or another, but you're not going to see performance go up if you're able to. And what educators are really good at doing, which I don't like, is making sure that it's never an apples to apples comparison. They're really good at shifting their data. I'm just seeing too many superintendents, be able to work something whatever way and then call it a success. But that's why I think the only metric that I really care about is how much are you spending per pupil, because I know that that's what moves the needle, is those kind of direct resources.
Yep.
If we meet 4 years from now, we'll probably be talking about the success of Little Bill and Osama's private wayward school for girls.
With your lifestyle, no way you make another 4 years.
Bill, I was saying there is a grift to be had. There will be oceans of sweet state cash we can use to not teach girls how to read, sir.
Hey, grifter's going to grift.
That's what capitalism's about.
Pete, take us over. We're at
An idea for our first superintendent, Jamie.
Yep.
Or LJL.
Jamie, we of course hog you on education policy because this is something that Bill and Kyle talk about literally every day, and they've been begging to talk about it on air. So
Did you read that bond issue?
yeah,
Oh, so yeah. So let me just add this, okay? And I don't know how to get the word out and how to be effective in politics to get vote out.
You're doing it.
And this is it. This is going to be the time. Well, then, the problem here is the election cycle. But I wish I could remember these numbers. But I think Harris County had something like 1.2 million registered voters that did not vote. The last election.
you talked about this on your TikTok. I saw. Yeah,
And I don't know if I'm saying the same numbers, but when I did on TikTok, it was the same. I researched the numbers, and it was something like a 900,000 vote margin in the last election. So, I would think that if the voters of Harris County were upset about their education system, and it could link up an action, because every action they want to take is not going to work. Oh, I'm going to go talk to the school board. Oh, I'm going to go fight the school district. It's all a point of system. All the way up to the Supreme Court, right? Everywhere you go, you have an Abbott appointee or a group of people at the very top that are going to support Abbott. You're not going to win while Abbott is in office. And so if they could link that up, then they could make their decision in the voting booth.
yeah, that's true. Any issue everyone talks about money and politics and all that, but if you actually organize, the union concept, you organize, get people together, commit them to vote, you'll be amazed at how responsive your elected officials will be. Right?
Bring us home, Pete.
All right. Well, thanks very much. If you like our show, like us, follow us, subscribe to us, YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram.
How do we find you on the TikTok?
That's right.
What's your handle?
I'm James Fallon, attorney.
And then do you have a website?
Oh, it's source subject.
Okay. They can find you on
Instagram, James Fallon, attorney. That's how you find me.
Okay, Instagram or TikTok, James Fallon.
I'm going to tell you this. When it comes to trouble in a schoolhouse, I'm the one you want. I've cross-examined like 1 million kids.
How about students? If a student has student is disciplined or something, and the parent doesn't like it, you
Anything
help.
adverse with the school district.
Okay, you're there.
Of education lawyers that all represent school districts.
Got it.
So there's only really a couple in the whole state, but there's a lot of nuance to those cases. If you're, your kid has a trouble in a discipline setting, and most of those aren't fee cases. Those are things I do on the phone to help people out. Teachers will get into trouble. Sometimes there's criminal trouble, and there's really only a handful of us, or like me, that knows how to navigate all those systems. So.
Yeah, that one comes up a lot where someone says my child has been screwed around by the school district or what have you, or another kid. I need help dealing with them, and I never know who to recommend. So now I have one.
Yeah, he did.
Okay, James Fallon, the attorney.
We lost Bill.
Yeah, he ran away.
We gained a James.
All right. Thank you so much. We will cut it out for tonight. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.